well, it'd be kind of facile to say that FBI agent Strozk was very, very nearly cited for contempt of Congress during the recent hearings, and if that's the case, he's going to have to get in the back of the line. He's got 300 million people in front of him. It does take a while to process all these people, but I think that's making it just a little bit too simple. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and this is your story about being dumbstruck in the U.S. Congress. I'll just try and keep this relatively brief. During his testimony, a former FBI agent who made several infamous tweets about F the president and how he's going to stop Trump from being nominated and elected and so on.
Text, yeah. Not
text, right. Sorry, yes, text. Basically said he had no prejudice at all whatsoever. And looked as much of a liar as anybody I've ever seen, honestly. I got the same, when he was testifying, I got the same feeling I got watching Michael Jackson tell me that he's never had any facial surgery, you know? It was just that, it's that exact same feeling, like just the raw nerve of you to do this. But the reason I wanted to cover this subject is actually not to make fun of this rather unpleasant individual, but rather to hold up two other individuals. One of them, who I think is way past due, and is Trey Gowdy, who as a former prosecutor, I have watched for 4 or 5 years now, with 2 or 3 other colleagues, doing his best to maintain the rule of law in the United States of America, and it was great to watch him at work. But I think this particular episode has to go to a congressman who I've met a few times, Louis Gohmert, who I thought was just exceptional. Not so much because of how effective he was, but he was effective, but because watching Louis Gohmert, I felt like, okay, there's at least a few people left in this country, in politics anyway, who understand how it's supposed to work and what shame is and what disgrace is and where it belongs. So, gentlemen, I'm going to play just a very brief little clip of Congressman Gohmert responding to Agent Strozk's perpetual smug denial of any bias whatsoever.
No, the disgrace, what this man has done.
The gentleman from Texas will suspend for a moment.
There is the disgrace. And it won't be recaptured anytime soon because of the damage you've done to the justice system. And I've talked to FBI agents around the country. You've embarrassed them. You've embarrassed yourself. And I can't help but wonder, when I see you looking there with a little smirk, how many times did you look so innocent into your wife's eye and lie to her about Lisa?
Mr. Chairman, this is outrageous.
Credibility of a witness
Shame
is always
on you,
an
Mr.
issue.
Mr. Chairman, please, there's
Mr. Chairman, this is intolerable harassment of the witness.
What's wrong with that? You need your medication.
Well, Steve, a number of the Democrats on the committee got up on their hind legs that a member of Congress would have the audacity, they were shocked, I say, to have Louis Gohmert call into question the character of this agent. What do you think about him basically bringing the fact that he's an adulterer into this case? Some people said it's against congressional rules, but it's only against congressional rules to do that to members of Congress.
Well, yeah. You know, we judge people for things like that, and we probably should. Is it proper for it to come up in a congressional inquiry? Well, in this case, yeah, I'm going to say so, because this is a weird dude. This Strozk guy, I know we're supposed to be talking about the congressman, but he is unhinged. He's unconnected to simple humanity. And the way you behave in a situation like this, he was off-putting. He at times appeared possessed. In fact, I don't know if you've ever seen Omen 3. Terrible movie. Just killed the franchise. But Sam Neill plays, grown-up Damien, spawn of Satan in this awful movie. And Sam Neill, in this over-the-top performance, had nothing on Peter Strozk talking to Congress last week. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. Grown men don't behave this way. In poker, you learn to watch for tells. in the other players. You know, this guy, when he's got a good hand, he holds his cards like this, or he puts them down on the table so he isn't tempted to look for them. There's another guy who's got a bad hand, always raises his eyebrow like he's got a good hand and you know he's about to bluff. You look for these little tiny tells, these subtle clues to a person's playing ability and kind of to their character. Strozk was a shivering, wincing, twisting mass of giant tells. He was like a Tex Avery cartoon. I've never seen a human being behave like this in a serious situation.
Oh, classic.
It was unnerving. And that's what we saw. What we didn't see, and I think this happened on Friday, is his FBI co-worker and paramour, Lisa Page, yeah.
Page, yeah.
She finally agreed, if that's the right word, to live up to her subpoena, but her testimony was behind closed doors, and the reports are that she was much more cooperative than Strozk was. So what's going to come out of that, I think, is going to be the big story, Bill.
That would be satisfactory to me. Scotty, the reason as I said, the reason I was so proud, actually, at that moment, was not just that Gohmert and Gowdy were going after what is clearly a fundamentally corrupt agency that's responsible for enforcing the law in America, not just the FBI, but the Justice Department entire. And I have to tell you, I liked seeing Louis Gohmert lose his cool. And by the way, if that's him losing his cool, he loses his cool in the coolest fashion I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, you could tell that I think at some point he had, after, I guess what I'm trying to say, Scott, is after the horror and the sequence of goat rodeos that Louis Gohmert has had to watch over the last several years in Congress, I think he finally found something that disgusted him on a level above and beyond the ordinary Hillary Clinton, lies and evasions and so on. What was it, do you think it was, that got him actually almost to break character in a sense as a congressman?
If I had to say, I would say it was the hubris of the witness. And by that I mean, there was a way that Peter Strozk could have played this that would have been successful, for want of a better term. When you have all this written evidence of his text messages going back and forth, not only with his adulterous affair paramour, as Steve called her, but also talking about President Trump in highly negative terms and talking about the horror of Trump getting elected and how we have to stop it and all that kind of stuff. There's a way that he could have given his testimony where he sort of sheepishly would say, I can understand why somebody reading these text messages would call into question my integrity and my ability to operate this investigation. Really? Sure. I can see how this looks. Clearly, it appears that I have bias here. I can also see why people would doubt my word when they know that I was not honest with my wife and that I was cheating on her. And I'm not going to try to change your mind if you see it that way. I will try to offer an explanation as to what I was really thinking at the time, which of these text messages going back and forth were really just sort of dark humor, and which of them were serious interactions having to do with things. I believe in my heart that I did not allow my personal feelings to corrupt the investigation process, but only the American people can determine that, and you here in this congressional panel. Now, I think that gets a hearing, at the very least. But to come out there and basically say, how dare you, Congressman? How dare you, allege that I have been, I have lacked integrity? How dare you say that I had bias? How dare you suggest that the entire FBI is a corrupt organization? And that's what he basically did. He threw his sin over the entire agency and basically said, look, if you're criticizing me, I'm the very embodiment of integrity in the FBI, and you've criticized the entire FBI, which is not, in fact, what the criticism is. It is that there are some people at the FBI who have allowed their own biases to stand in the way of executing justice in a manner which is blind to favoritism. And so, I think Louis Gohmert looks at that and says, you know, how offensive this is to have people whose highest calling is to administer justice in this country. And this guy is the worst sort of arrogant, dissembling weasel. And he's sitting here before the people's representatives mocking justice.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to rewind this show after I finish speaking, obviously.
Obviously.
And I'd like you to go back to that moment when Scott, for a minute or so, speaks as something that Agent Strunk could have said. Because what I found so interesting about that was the sound of an honest man trying to honestly portray his lack of honesty. And that's what the kind of integrity that would never get into those weeds in the first place sounds like. And when you find that you don't hear something like that from this fellow, it's the same thing with Hillary Clinton and all the rest of these people. They simply don't have the moral. It's not there. They're gears and parts that are missing, transistors and so on, that simply don't allow them to go to that place. I suspect that the thing that actually got Louis Gohmert more heated than he usually is was, as both of you mentioned, the idea that this terminal liar would throw his net around the entire FBI, as if to say, by accusing me, you hereby accuse the entire FBI. I think it was Gohmert. It was either Gohmert or Gowdy who said, listen, I've heard a lot of text messages. I've gotten a lot of emails from FBI agents around the country, and they are ashamed and they're embarrassed and they're mortified. And I suspect that he's had to deal with a number of those kinds of emails. And I know that the huge majority of people in the FBI work long hours to try to make sure nothing bad happens to us. But I also have to say that I was astonished and filled with despair to discover how deep the rot inside the Justice Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation is. I would simply say to anybody who might be involved with the Justice Department, not that they're lining up to watch the show, but just for a matter of philosophical debate, I would simply say this. You took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States and protect the people of the United States. You were called to do that by some force of goodness and justice inside of you. And I would say to you that if you're aware of something that needs to be brought to the light of day in front of Congress, for them to decide, not for you to decide, not for the mob to decide, but for the laws of this country to decide, I think it is the better part of courage and commitment and duty and love of country to do so, even if it means resigning, especially if it means resigning. Yeah. I would much rather be an honest former FBI agent than a crooked current one. And I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities for people to look into that particular equation. And I hope that most of them will step up and do the right thing as I thought Louis Gohmert does the right thing. Yes, we have a right to question if you're going to stay here and lie to our faces, as Strunk did, then yeah. If you're going to lie to our faces, I would say exactly what Gohmert said. You are a superb liar. I know you're lying. You're lying now. You were such a good liar, you're able to lie to the closest person in your life. You're able to lie to your wife with absolute impunity and great success. Yeah, it's legitimate. I think absolutely it is. What an unpleasant fellow this Strunk is. And what a joy it is to see a congressman filled with righteous anger about something that you should be righteously angry about for a change. If you would like to be a part of the fun, you can join us here at BillWhittle.com. For Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. We'll see you next week on Right Angle.